So I finally got a Fenrir ODE for my beloved Sega Saturn a couple of weeks ago, and yes, I've missed Halloween completely, but fuck it, it's still spooky season as far as I'm concerned, and looking through the Saturn's library, there are in fact loads of horror games on Sega's ill-fated but utterly awesome console. Some of them are great, some of them are completely shite, but almost all of them are very memorable. This isn't going to be a complete and exhaustive list, but we will be covering the bulk of this vast haunted library. So please join me as I wade into this haunted lake of ghoulish FMV horror games, cute-em-up shooters, Resident Evil clones, and Resident Evil. Let's get stuck in. Cotton 2 Magical Night Dreams is a 1997 scrolling shooter arcade video game developed by Success and published by Tecmo. The fourth installment in the Cotton franchise, it's the arcade sequel to Cotton Fantastic Night Dreams. In the game, players assume the role of either the titular young witch or her rival Aptly, who, alongside their companions Silk and Needle, sets out on a quest to defeat several monsters and retrieve the missing Blue Water Willow candy to Pumpkin Kingdom. Yeah, it's definitely a simulation game. Its gameplay is similar to the first game, consisting of shooting mixed with fighting and role-playing game-esque elements using a main 3-button configuration. In its arcade iteration, it ran on the STV hardware. There's some lovely 2D artwork here, with the Saturn's scaling and rotation abilities on full display. The Saturn was a 2D powerhouse, and arguably the ultimate 2D console. This game is great, but it's also hard as balls. Don't let the cute exterior fool you. This has a score of 74 based on 5 reviews, according to the good folks at Sega Retro. It's a good time.
Welcome to hell, sucker! Get your booty down here, you poor damn fool! Winston gonna cut you down, man. But we gotta jump quick now. Zombie come.
Corpse Killer is a full-motion video game developed and published by Digital Pictures. It was released for the Mega CD and 3DO Games consoles and Windows and Macintosh computers. It was one of 5 games released for the Sega Mega CD 32X platform. An enhanced version of the game, titled Corpse Killer Graveyard Edition, was released for the Sega Saturn in North America, and that's what we're looking at today. Corpse Killer is an on-the-rails shoot-em-up game interspersed with FMV clips. The objective is to shoot zombies and avoid taking too much damage. On the Saturn, the shoot-em-up sequences were remade, though aside from differing graphics, enemy placements, including zombies that get much closer to the screen, and extra difficulty levels, the core structure of moving to the right while shooting things in the face remains the same.
Well, I'm a zombie fooper. You know, welcome wagon. Light 'em up. Yeah, man. Lots of buzzard meat.
Hey!
You missed one.
I'm not dead.
Pity.
Hi, Julie Barnes, journalist. She read my stuff, syndicated. But when I break this story, I'll have a book, late night talk shows, TV, the works.
The only thing you gonna break, lady, is your neck.
Winston, I'm trying.
I mean, this game is a fucking abomination, really. Just look how ugly and shite these sprites are here. But you know, there's just something about it. It's so utterly cack, ugly, and exploitative that it just crosses over into kind of ludicrous territory, and I chuckled my way through this little playthrough that you're watching here. There is some serious warp speed ham in these performances from actors including the awesome Vincent Schiavelli of Cuckoo's Nest, Batman Returns, Ghost, and many, many others fame. That wasn't a very good sentence, sorry.
You're the one decaying and dying. My soldiers have been charged with the elemental power of nature. It ripped them out of the ground and stood them up. Eternal death is inevitable. You can have it in a box or standing tall. Your choice.
They all know that this game is toss and they're determined to have fun with it, and that definitely comes across. I do find the game a bit more peppy than most other FMV games of this era, and at least you do kind of understand what to do in this one, without a strategy guide, pen and paper like you do with Night Trap, for example, and the gameplay is functional, at least. This has a score of 58 based on 3 reviews, but look, if you like this kind of game, then by all means, go for it. If you think that these kinds of games are shite, then this one will certainly not change your mind. D is a horror-themed interactive movie and adventure game developed by Warp. It was first published for the 3DO in 1995, later being ported to the Saturn, PlayStation, and MS-DOS. The story follows Laura Harris as she goes to investigate a hospital after learning her father went on a mass murdering spree and barricaded himself inside. I know how that feels. The hospital morphs into a castle upon her arrival, which she must explore to find her father. The player controls Laura via FMV sequences and must complete the game within 2 hours without a save or a pause function. D is pretty great in my opinion. It was directed and written by Kenji Ino, the auteur game developer who sadly died at a young age, and who also made Enemy Zero D2 and a number of other distinctive and atmospheric Sega gems. I played this game with my big brother back in '96 and we were totally enveloped by its unique atmosphere. Laura's extremely slow walk, her heels clacking noisily against the tiled floor, and most of all, the silence. It doesn't rely on mountains of gore, although there certainly is some, and it isn't filled with mere jump scares. It has a very nicely sustained aura of dread and mystery, and a strange kind of sadness to it actually, with some very weird, imaginative and memorable sequences that have lived long in the retro mule's brain. It's also a game that you have to play through in 2 hours, and I would most definitely recommend giving this a playthrough one spooky Halloween evening. You can play the entire thing in one sitting, of course, and it will most definitely stay with you. This received 73 on Sega Retro, and I think that's a bit harsh. This game has a vibe and an atmosphere that's still able to weave its magic over the player despite the aged format and the compressed FMV. It's a bit of a gem in my opinion, and quite possibly my favourite game on this list.
Casper, where are you? Come out, wherever you are.
Casper. This game is based on the 1995 film of the same name. An 11-year-old retro mule fell in love with Christina Ricci while he watched this film at the cinema, but unfortunately this game doesn't feature much of her beautiful bulb-headed charms. It certainly does have a certain something though. It plays as a top-down action-adventure game with pre-rendered graphics. The game features an alternate rendition of the film's plot, spread across 3 acts consisting of Casper finding tokens of friendship for Kat and Dr. Harvey, then finding the pieces for the Lazarus machine, which the ghostly trio had disassembled to prevent Casper from using it, and assembling it, and finally finding the cellular integrator with which to restore Harvey. All the while exploring the mansion, collecting jigsaw pieces to solve puzzles for morph icons, eating food for morph points, and dealing with the ghostly trio of uncles.
I want my dinner, Casper! Feed me!
The typical Saturn mesh shadows are a bit of a bummer in terms of the presentation, but it still looks pretty pleasant overall, let's say. This game is really kind of unusually low-key for a film tie-in, it seems to me, and I quite like it for that reason. It's almost entirely exploration-based, with some mild puzzle solving and some nice spooky music, and they've certainly captured the vibe of the movie sets quite nicely. I must admit, I got a bit bored with it back in the day. I had the PS1 version briefly for some reason. And yeah, playing it through again recently, I did get a bit fed up after a couple of hours, but it does have a certain charm to it. This gets an average score of 66 based on 13 reviews.
Everyone on base, until instructions are given, do not make a sound. Stop all construction work. I repeat, do not make a sound. This is not a drill.
Deep Fear is a Sega Saturn survival horror game developed by Systems Sacom or Sacom and Sega CS2 and published by Sega. First released in Japan in July 98, it was later released in Europe the following September and was the last European first-party game for the Saturn. Set on the underwater Big Table Research Facility, the player controls John Mayer as an unknown infection begins transforming the facility staff into hostile mutants. Gameplay has Mayer exploring the Big Table, gathering items and resources while fighting enemies. The game was designed as a science fiction take on the Japanese mansion mystery genre, with the aim being to create fear from the environments and the monsters. Notable staff included co-producer Reiko Kodama of Skies of Arcadia fame, composer Kenji Kawai of Ghost in the Shell fame, and artist Yasushi Nerasawa as the monster designer. The game met with mixed reviews from critics. Praise was given to its music and elements of its gameplay, which was often compared to Resident Evil, while reactions to its graphics were mixed and the voice acting was panned. Just take a listen to this absolute gold.
What happened?
We don't know yet. I asked Dubois, the designer, to come too.
Oh, there's no problem with my CFOX system. No accident should have occurred. Oh!
We can't get through on the wireless to either the Seafox or the Navy area. We have no idea what's going on over there.
This is terrible. My masterpiece is ruined. Oh, what am I going to do?
The rest?
I'll do my best.
I don't want
I enjoyed what I played at this game. The Resident Evil controls are here in full effect and the claustrophobic setting is suitably claustrophobic. This game supports analog control, which really improves things actually, meaning I can just turn and face the other direction almost immediately rather than having to rotate myself like a turret while my little legs flutter around beneath me like in Resident Evil. So that's cool.
Hey, you okay?
Kill me, please.
What?
Kill me, please.
What's this?
It's a pretty great soundtrack from Kenji Kawai too, although as you probably would expect, it's quite a bit more conventional than something like his soundtracks for the Ghost in the Shell movies. It certainly has a dash of magic at times though. This is a pretty high quality game with some quite nice graphics for the Saturn. Certainly it's equal to Resident Evil in my opinion, and if you're a big fan of this format, I'm not particularly to be honest, although I do find them fairly enjoyable, then I think you would have been very pleased with this back in the day, and it still holds up to some degree in 2023. The performances are dreadful, of course, and they were called out in reviews at the time, but as far as I'm concerned, they just make it all the more fun. The whole thing feels like a sort of 80s or 90s canon movie or something like that. Rather cheap and a bit flimsy feeling, but nevertheless has a certain spark of imagination about it that just keeps you engaged. This one has a score of 76 based on 15 reviews, and I think that's a bit harsh too.
Mookie, pilot me around the Navy area.
Wait! Okay, I'll do it! I'll do it! But on the condition that you give me my vacation 1 week earlier. Then I'll take you around the Navy area wherever you want.
Okay, I'll see to it you get topside earlier.
Alright, I gotta get out of here. This place gives me the creeps.
Welcome to the illustrious Misty Town Jail, stranger. You're not from around these parts, are you?
No, I am not. The name that they call me is Fred.
They call you Fred? What is your real name?
I can't seem to remember any other. I have no memory. I lost my memory 4 years ago.
That's a tough break. I'll call you Fred. I got a memory. People call me Anthony.
Torico, known in North America as Lunacy, is a Sega Saturn adventure game which exclusively utilised FMV, comprised of pre-rendered 3D animation, the spiritual successor to titles like Mystery Mansion and The Mansion of Hidden Souls. It was first released in Japan in June '96 and was later localised and released in the West the following March. There exists a legendary city where your every wish is granted, but wishes have a price. Those who have walked into the magical city wear a special mark upon their foreheads and have no memory of who they once were. The gateway to this mysterious realm lies in your hometown, the City of Mists. You too wear the mark of a wishmaker. Your past is a blur, but your future is set. Lord Gordon, ruler of the City of Mists, has ordered you to once again find the entrance to the legendary city or be killed. Once you return, you must discover how to keep the magical realm from destroying itself and your homeland as you try to regain your most precious possessions, your memories, and your car keys. This game plays almost identically to Mystery Mansion. The player assumes the role of an amnesiac traveller named Fred. He can travel on predetermined paths and movement is displayed via the FMV. Like Jonathan in Mystery Mansion, Fred can examine objects, some of which can be packed up and held in his inventory. In addition to the inventory seen in the previous two games, Torico introduces Memory Select, which allows Fred to review any conversation he has had. Unlike June, in the Mansion of Hidden Souls, the player can't control the conversation Fred has with other characters in any way, but you can give them items from his inventory in certain situations. This game is fairly linear and set in the City of Mists. Fred navigates this quaint town and can enter buildings that are often inhabited by complete weirdos.
You again? What do you want? If you've come empty-handed, there's the door.
Hey, who are you?
I'm a traveler. Call me Fred.
I'm Hannah. The inn is closed. Good luck, traveler.
Fred's goal is to find the City of Moons. Completing this disc ends in only one possible outcome. There are several possible outcomes depending on what items are used and given. Fred's goal here is to recover his memory and find out his true background. This is one I always used to see on store shelves back in the day and be quite intrigued by, but never actually tried for myself. Until now. I don't remember there being much fanfare for it whatsoever, but it's definitely an interesting game. FMV games were a bit of a laughingstock in the latter half of the 90s after a number of high-profile shit ones in the Mega CD days, and I think a lot of them were unfairly sort of pigeonholed and dismissed offhand at the time by audiences and by the press, and this is one of them. Okay, it's not genius, but it has a unique, sort of vaguely Mexican setting and aesthetic, a hilariously creepy camp guy at the opening, kinda like a giant, big, gay Marlon Brando, and an uncanny, claustrophobic vibe, and some surprisingly chill and absorbing music.
This place is hazardous to my health. I gotta get out of here.
Don't move. Leaving us already? But you just got here. Sweating like a pig.
You threw me in prison, punk! Why did you do that?
Did I do that?
Ah!
Movement in the game is much quicker than many FMV games, which is a good thing in my opinion, and like several of the games on this list, it really does take its time to create tension within a well-realised horror setting and doesn't just throw blood and guts and jump scares at you. That is to be commended, in my opinion. The performances again are wonderfully weird and utterly shit, and that's a good thing. And I recommend giving it a whirl. This one got 72 based on 22 reviews.
My town. I didn't catch the name, friend.
I didn't throw it, friend.
Perhaps you should be a little more polite. It may affect your health.
My name is Fred. Fred, tell me about that crescent tattoo on your forehead.
Don't ask.
Alone in the Dark 2, Jack is Back, otherwise known as Jack is Cack. It's a 1993 survival horror game developed and published by Infogrames. In the second installment in the Alone in the Dark series, it was ported to the PC 98 and FM Towns in 94 and to the 3DO in 95 under the same name, and to the Saturn and PlayStation in 96 as Alone in the Dark Jack is Back in Europe. Renamed as Alone in the Dark One-Eyed Jack's Revenge in North America. Sounds like a porn film. It is Christmas of 1924, 3 months after Alone in the Dark. Supernatural private eye Edward Carnby and his partner Ted Stryker are investigating the kidnapping of young Grace Saunders. The trail of clues leads to an old mansion named Hell's Kitchen. No, not the one with Gordon Ramsay. It's the home of an infamous gangster boss and his gang. Edward decides to pick up the trail when he learns of Ted's disappearance in the mansion, but Edward soon finds out that Ted has been murdered. Carnby eventually finds out that the mobsters are the corporeal forms of the spirits of pirates that plundered the sea hundreds of years ago, having sold their souls in exchange for eternal life through voodoo magic. Fighting his way into the house and ultimately onto a pirate ship hidden in the cliff, upon which Jack's house is built, Edward must survive, discover the secret of the pirates' apparent immortality, rescue little Grace, and find out why the pirates are so interested in her. I'm sure this game has its merits, but by God, it does a good job of hiding them. It's an older game than the others on this list, and it does feel kind of nascent, to be honest, from the music to the graphics to the controls, and unfortunately that doesn't do it any favours. I'm probably being unfair on this game because it did kind of forge a path through this real-time 3D survival horror business that was later built upon by better games. But at the end of the day, when placed next to many of the titles on this list, it just doesn't compare favourably. I found it kind of unplayable, to be honest with you. This one has 64 based on 23 reviews. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. Enemy Zero is a 1996 horror-themed adventure video game for the Sega Saturn developed by Warp and directed by Kenji Ino again. Players assume the role of an astronaut who awakens from cryogenic sleep to find a spaceship overrun by invisible creatures who are hunting and killing the ship's crew. They must navigate through the ship in a combination of puzzle-driven exploration rendered in FMV and first-person shooter sections rendered in real time, during which they must rely on sound to either avoid or kill the invisible enemies. In Enemy Zero, gameplay sequences alternate between FMV and real time. The player explores node-based environments, acquiring items for their inventory and solving puzzles. The real-time component of Enemy Zero is unique. Enemies are invisible, and location is only possible through the use of sound, with notes of differing pitch helping the player find the distance and direction of enemies. Additionally, every gun in the game must be charged up immediately before each shot, and charging a shot for too long will cause the charge to dissipate, after which the charging must start again. Since all available guns have very limited range, this makes timing crucial. Beginning to charge the gun too late or too soon will allow the enemy to reach Laura, resulting in an immediate game over. This game is too scary for me. It's tenser than my bum hole after a bad toffee apple, and I just can't really play it, to be honest with you. I love the style and the music and everything, but Jesus Christ, it's claustrophobic and unpleasant. I would never criticize a game for being too good at what it sets out to do, of course. That would be silly. This is an extremely effective sci-fi horror game. I think every gamer knows that good horror games are a scarier experience than watching horror films. You just put films on and you know that whatever happens, the film is going to end, and you don't really have to do anything yourself. But when you're actively engaged and might get your head smashed off at any given minute, it can be an intensely stressful experience. I'm not saying horror games are better than horror films, I'm just saying they're more stressful, and this one is stressful as hell. The alien enemy is silent, and when the motion sensor starts beeping, it really is Brown Tries time for me. The issue for me on the Saturn version is that the audio is only in stereo, and so you're a bit limited in your ability to detect where the thing's coming from. Some have called this game unplayable, and I think that's unfair, but I will say that the later PC release, which integrated the option of 3D sound, courtesy of Direct Sound 3D for headphone users, thus allowing the player to hear the creature approaching from all angles, has to be the better version really. So I would say wear headphones and play the PC version of this one. This one received 76 based on 25 reviews, and it is quite a legendary game in the Sega Saturn library. Give it a whirl. Resident Evil, what can I say about this one? I had it on the PS1 and it looked amazing for its time and was a bit of a sensation upon its release, but it scared me shitless as a 12-year-old and so I didn't play much of it. I bought it on the Saturn about 10 years ago now and played it through and enjoyed my time with it, although some of the edges had been sanded down a bit due to it being so legendary and much discussed, and with so many elements of it having been recycled in other more recent games. Anyway, it was a pretty revolutionary game in its day, of course, and despite its familiarity, it's still worth playing through now in my opinion. The Saturn port is good. Capcom was a strong supporter of Sega back in those days, and they've added some features to this port such as a battle mode, more enemies, slightly more detailed backgrounds, zombie Wesker, different alternate outfits, arguably better looking character models, and some other stuff. It also had some drawbacks too, but it's certainly worth picking up if you're a Resident Evil aficionado. I'm not a big Resident Evil man by any stretch, but it's a really worthwhile game, and this Saturn version is a good port. This one gets 90 based on 27 reviews.
He's alive. Alive! I have created life. There. That will make you feel better. A toast. In celebration. I have made a man.
Frankenstein, Through the Eyes of the Monster, is a point-and-click adventure game starring Tim Curry as Dr. Frankenstein and has the player controlling a newly created Frankenstein's monster. Other cast members include Robert Rothrock as the voice of the monster, Rebecca Wink as villager Sarah, and Amanda Fuller as Gabrielle, the monster's daughter. It used FMV clips and 3D CGI graphics similar to Myst. The game was developed by Amazing Media and published by Interplay for the PC in '95 and for the Saturn in '97. Scientist Philip Warren's daughter Gabrielle is killed in unexplained circumstances, and Philip is charged with her murder and hanged by Judge Rothenbush. Dr. Frankenstein believes that life is created by a mysterious energy called Energy L, and that a compound he has discovered called Lifestone can be used to channel energy L and reanimate deceased tissue. After several failed attempts at this process, he brings Philip back to life in his laboratory. His memory is hazy. Philip explores Frankenstein's castle, collecting his notes in order to recreate the process by which he reanimates the dead. During his exploration, Philip unknowingly releases a second Frankenstein's monster from captivity and comes across another of the Doctor's experiments, a talking reanimated hand called Dirt. Enraged that Philip has been stealing his notes, Frankenstein throws him in the dungeon and tortures him. Yes, it's a lovely family game. I won't go through the whole of the plot, but I will say that these games just weren't in vogue on the console at that time, and the reception was not terribly good, and I think it's a bit unfair. This isn't a masterpiece by any means, but there's a lot of content here, a strong atmosphere, and a big performance, as you might expect, from the legendary Tim Curry. I love the way his unsettling little Grinchy face just kind of randomly pops out from behind a desk or a wall here.
Modesty be damned! I am a genius!
They seem to have used the Saturn's high-res mode here as well to capture the full whopping 640x480 resolution of the original PC release, which is nice. I don't know how the fuck you would figure out some of the puzzles in this game without a guide, to be honest, unless you have absolutely nothing else to do with your life whatsoever, but hey, different strokes for different folks. This is certainly one worth checking out. It has a score of 60 based on 5 reviews.
Dead tissue. The meal was quite good. Too bad you missed it. Eat what's left.
The Mansion of Hidden Souls is a Sega Saturn sequel to Yumemi Mystery Mansion. It was followed by Torico in '96. Gameplay is similar to Mystery Mansion and Torico, in which the player assumes the role of June and solves a series of strange events with the NPC Mike. Such wonderful exotic names in this one. The game uses FMV to render the titular mansion, and June can move down predetermined paths and examine objects, some of which can be picked up and added to June's inventory. Unlike the other 2 games in the series, there are no puzzles to speak of. Instead, June has to converse with other residents to solve problems, using either the A button to react positively or the C button to react negatively.
June, how long is it since you last came here? Well, since turning my back on human society and changing my form to that of a butterfly. Oh, no. I haven't called you here to talk about the old days. It appears that Mike has come too.
June, you're here too. Can I help you, Elder?
I have called both of you here for a reason. I'm rather concerned about something. Have you seen the moon tonight?
Compared to the original game, the Saturn sequel was met with negative reviews, as critics found that it failed to capture the strong qualities of the original despite being on a more powerful system. This one is unique in that it's the only game that genuinely makes you feel like you're going insane as you play it. Just look at this utter lunacy.
A customer. We're rather busy right now. Could you come back later? Sorry. That guy always wants something in return. He's always been like that.
It does struggle to offer up a sort of compelling premise. There's no real jeopardy as the game starts, as in something like Resident Evil. You just kind of pop into a house and find yourself walking about and these floating talking heads start speaking to you about nothing much in particular. It does have a unique atmosphere to it though, and I do appreciate the fact that it's not just filled wall to wall with blood and guts. This one gets 64 based on 21 reviews and did not set the world on fire.
If you don't have any business, get out.
Morning, honey.
Good morning, sweetheart.
How about some coffee?
Yeah, big one. Somebody kept me up last night.
Well, I'm sorry. I had a nightmare. You didn't seem to mind so much last night.
Oh, no. Was probably just spending the night in a new house is all.
Yeah, I know. I have to admit, this place is kind of strange.
Yeah, it's different. You know, I bet the guy that built this place must have been really bizarre.
Phantasmagoria is a legendary point-and-click adventure game designed by Roberta Williams for DOS and Microsoft Windows and released by Sierra Online in 1995. It tells the story of Adrienne Delaney, a writer who moves into a remote mansion and finds herself terrorized by supernatural forces. It was made at the peak of popularity for interactive movie games and features live-action actors and footage, both during cinematic scenes and within the three-dimensionally rendered environments of the game itself. It was noted for its violence and its sexual content. This was one of those big, notorious games back in the day. I didn't get a PC at home until '97, I think, but even so, I'd heard of this game and its infamous rape scene. You'd hear about this one on Games Master on TV, say, and read about it in the gaming magazines, but this game remained out of my grasp until now, of course. This game is synonymous with the PC, really, but oddly enough, this game was in fact ported to the Sega Saturn, just not in the West. It was only released in Japan, but thanks to some awesome guys out on the interslice somewhere, it is now fully translated, and here it is in all its glory. The FMV quality is quite poor, unfortunately, but it's certainly an entertaining game. It does feel like it's about to burst into a full-on porn scene at any given moment, really, but that just adds to its magic, doesn't it? There's a great big flying fucking Oscar thing on the screen at all times, which is a bit much because I have to keep moving the fucking thing out of the way when I want to actually watch something. It also has CG backgrounds that make George Lucas blush. They didn't appear to use microphones to record the dialogue.
What's his name?
The actors also have this giant blue outline around them from the blue screen process, presumably, which is pretty mad looking.
Check out the aura on this sucker.
Even the fucking fire's got one there. But despite all this stuff, you know, these FMV games just have a quiet, uncanny magic about them. Particularly this one. The PC release received mixed reviews, averaging 62 on Metacritic, but like many an FMV game, it lives long in the memory.
What are you doing?
Well, I'm starting my new book.
So what? Did you go buy the drain cleaner like I asked you to?
What? Drain cleaner?
Don't be coy with me. I asked you several times to go buy me drain cleaner. Now, did you do it?
I know you said the sink was clogged in your darkroom, but you never asked me to go get you any drain cleaner. I would have remembered something like that.
You know, this is just like you. I bust my ass for you all the time. And you don't do anything but sit on your butt like you're doing right now.
What? What is wrong with you? I don't understand.
Fine. The next time you want something, don't come crawling to me.
Fine. I'll go to the store and get your goddamn drain cleaner.
Oh no!
Others are still inside. Save them.
The House of the Dead is a Sega Model 2 arcade horror light gun game developed by Sega AM1. First released to Japanese arcades in September '96 to critical and commercial success, its widespread popularity established the long-running House of the Dead franchise, and the game has since been regarded as one of Sega's seminal and classic arcade titles. In March '98, House of the Dead was ported to the Saturn, and only 2 months later saw a port to Windows PCs, both courtesy of developer Tantalus Interactive. Well, they tried anyway. This is a good port considering the capabilities of the Sega Saturn, but the gulf in power between this and the original Model 2 arcade board is too great. It looks very rough. It is a damn fun game though, of course. I've always kind of preferred the sequel on Dreamcast to this one, and unlike this one, that looks really good to this day. That being said, this is still a damn good time, especially if you have the gun, which I don't.
Thank you.
This one got 73 based on 22 reviews.
Thank you.
Mr. Bones is a Sega Saturn experimental action game developed by Zono and published by Sega. Conceptualized by Ed Anaziata, I've mispronounced that, I do apologise. The game is an eccentric and surreal experience combining numerous gameplay styles and mechanics ranging from action platformer to rhythm game to Tempest-like, and was first released in the United States in October 96, 2 weeks before Halloween. The game is notable for being composed by famed American guitarist Ronnie Montrose, and for being one of the few Western games of the era to receive a published soundtrack in North America. Yeah, I used to see this one on store shelves back in the day, and to be honest, I used to think to myself, who is going to buy a full price 40 quid game called Mr. Bones over these other titles on display here? I didn't play it at the time because, to be honest, if I'd saved up all my pocket money for about 18 years to buy a brand new Saturn game, I would have gone for Fighters Megamix, Shining Force 3, Panzer Dragoon Saga, Knights, etc, etc, etc. This one never really had a chance at retail, I would say, but this is a shame, and it does the game a disservice, as with the power of an SD card chock full of any game that I wish to play, I can now see that this game is unique and visually interesting and has a very cool soundtrack. One of the Saturn's most unique Western titles for sure, I think, and even if it's not exactly my bag, I can absolutely appreciate why people are into it. This one got 70 based on 17 reviews. Swagman. Here's an interesting one. Swagman is a 97 action-adventure video game developed by the legendary Core Design and published by Eidos Interactive in Europe for the Saturn and North America for the PlayStation. In the game, players assume the role of Zack and Hannah trying to free the imprisoned Dreamflight fairies and stop the villain Swagman from unleashing his horde of monsters upon the world whose inhabitants cannot wake up from their nightmares. The title was developed in conjunction with other projects at Core Design, taking influence from the works of Tim Burton. Versions for both the 32X and Atari Jaguar CD were announced but not released. It was received mostly positively by critics. Yeah, I found this one interesting. It's actually quite a difficult game, and the setup and theme are definitely unique. I guess it's somewhat similar in spirit to the older Zombies Ain't My Neighbors games, although that series had a stronger sense of humour it seems. This one is a bit more sinister in tone from what I played, and to be honest, it did make me feel a bit weird as I was playing it. It does have a pretty great soundtrack though, and it's certainly a curio worth checking out. 81 based on 9 reviews. So there we have it. It might not be the most obvious candidate, but for my money, the Saturn has one of the strongest console horror game libraries. With exclusives like Enemy Zero, Deep Fear, Mr. Bones, House of the Dead, Torico, Mansion of Hidden Souls, etc, etc, horror gaming on the Saturn was a truly unique experience of the time, and it remains so today. What are your favourite Saturn horror games? Please let me know in the comments below, and please remember...
If you don't have any business, get out.
Fine! I'll go to the store and get your goddamn drain cleaner.